So there are a couple of points here we want to see. First of all, and I want to finish it, try to finish it today, but there are a few more crucial points here. If you take a look at Perek Yud Daled Pasuk Chaf Daled, this is a fundamental, one of the most what would I call it? An idea that had a tremendous impact on myself, and if you understand it, it's vital. Page 806, page 806. This is. We should really wait for the guys to come in, but we won't. This is after the sin. So then Hashem, just as a background, the backdrop is that Hashem says he's going to destroy the Jewish. He wants to destroy the Jewish people. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, no, don't destroy the Jewish people. So Hashem says, okay, I'll give him another chance. But then in Pasuk Chaf Daled, it's 806, about 6 lines from the bottom. He says, Im yiru as ha'aretz asher nishbati la'avosav chom anatzai lo yiru. The people are not going to see the land. They're going to be dying. Then he says, V'avdi Kalev, my servant, Kalev, Ekev haisa ruach acheres imo, since he had a different attitude, V'yamalei acharai, he remained loyal to me, V'aviosi v'la oretz asher boshama v'zar yoshanah, I'll bring Kalev into the land and his offspring are going to inherit it. And that refers specifically to Hebron. Kalev is going to end up, his portion in the land of Israel is going to be Hebron. And here, Rav Moshe Feinstein says a rule. And in order to understand his rule, we have to understand exactly how it transpired, what the sequence of events was. The sequence of events was that the spies, the Jewish people are told you're going into the land of Israel. They're told by God you're going into the land of Israel. To question the word of God is sinful. If God says it's going to good land, you're going to go into the land, it's going to be good land. To question that land is sinful. It's very sinful. It's extreme. It's a rebellion against God to have any doubt whatsoever that God could bring you into the land. Gentlemen, page 806. Page 806. To have any doubt at all that God could carry out what he said and that what he said is accurate, to have any doubt at all about that is sinful. So the Meraglim come back, and the Meraglim say, at first they only imply it. They say, "Oi, it's a problem. It's a problem to go into the land of Israel." The moment they say that, the reaction of the Jewish people is, "Oi!" That just shows they're Jewish, by the way. Oi vey, oi, oi. It's like the rabbi gets up in shul and says, "All right, we're going to have an appeal. We need money for the shul," and the whole shul goes, "Oi, oi vey." Again, he wants money. All is guilt. Again, he wants money. Okay. So the Meraglim, they say they're discouraging, and as soon as they're discouraging, the people collectively go, "Oi." At that moment, it's an Avera. You've sinned against God. What are you owing for? God said, where's your faith? Everything that's happened. There's a flaw. It's an Avera. You've missed the mark. Kalev speaks. God says, no, we could go in. At that point, at least some of the people said, yeah. Maybe all of them. At that point, they did tshuva, right? And then the Meraglim come along and the Meraglim say, no. It's a eretz achal. We're going to get shmeisted there. There's no way to go in. Oi! And at that point, Hashem says they start crying, and then there's punishment comes out, and so that's the sequence of events. Now, let me ask you, Rav Moshe Feinstein says Kalev's going to get an incredible reward here. He's going to come into the land of Israel, gets a portion. His children are going to inherit it. And Rav Moshe Feinstein says, what did he accomplish? What did Kalev accomplish at the end of the day? What did he accomplish? Nothing. He didn't accomplish anything. How do you know he didn't accomplish anything? Because Kalev, what do you call it? The people still cried. You tried. Good try. You tried. You made an effort. You tried to what do you call it? But at the end of the day, don't sit here. At the end of the day, that's why I moved the chair. So you can pull it to the wall, but not against the table. At the end of the day, Kalev didn't accomplish anything tangible. That's that's the fact. The fact was the people cried and then got 40 years in the desert. Right? True or not true? Okay. Now, Moshe Feinstein says it can't be that Kalev's reward is for effort alone. It can't be that, what is the door needs to be called? Huh? It can't be that Moshe Rabbeinu's reward is for effort alone. He doesn't say where he gets that premise from, but he just says the reward can't be for effort alone. So why is he getting such a reward? There's only effort. How could he possibly get such a reward for effort? For effort, you don't get that kind of reward. I don't know where he gets that premise. That's the premise Moshe Feinstein makes. If he said it, that's the way it is. So he says the following. Imagine there's a guy who's on a respirator in the hospital, and the doctor's going to pull the plug. I don't know why the doctor is always the one who murders the guy. I don't know why. If it's a mercy killing, so you should honor the brother, the father, the wife, somebody. Why the doctor? The doctor, anybody could pull a plug. Even kids could pull a plug. Have one of the little kids go pull the plug, son. Why the doctor has to be the murderer? I'm not sure. Okay. Good, I got that off my chest. So what do you call it? So imagine the guy's in the hospital, the doctor's about to pull the plug. You're walking through the halls of the hospital and you see the doctor, so you grab his hand to keep his hand off the plug. And you manage to keep his hand off the plug for a minute, and then he gets his hand loose and he pulls the plug and the patient is murdered. Would you say that during that minute you accomplished anything tangible or not?
Yeah.
No?
You lived a minute longer.
You probably lived a minute longer. If it was 10 minutes, you'd agree it was tangible?
You get the right idea.
If it's 10 minutes, would you agree it's tangible?
Sure.
Okay, an hour, we were certainly tangible, right? A minute, even 5 seconds, it's tangible, another moment of life. That's a tangible, concrete accomplishment. Says Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, when a person does tshuva, I've had people ask me all the time, what's the success rate at Ohr Somayach? People ask me many times over here, what's the success rate at Ohr Somayach? You know what the answer is? 100%. 100% success rate. Why? Before you start going, let's understand what that means. Right after you turn on the air conditioning, I'll explain to you. What is the what is the thing? Sorry. While you're up, can you turn on the air conditioning? What's the success rate? Or success rate is 100%. Why is that? Because imagine you have a home and you have Shabbos and you invite some guy over to your house who has been in college for 4 years and he's basically he's studying microbrewing and microbrewing and various substance abuse. Those are his majors in college. And this guy is sitting at your house on a Friday night. He has zero attachment to anything religious. And he starts asking you questions, and he sings Miros with you, and he does Kiddush with you. Then you see the guy, and the guy says, wow, this is really interesting. I should really try to get into this. Then you see the guy 10 years later, and he has moved religiously zero, not one iota religiously. Would you say that Friday night in your house was no accomplishment at all? Didn't get anything. The guy never became Shomer Shabbos. Therefore, you accomplished nothing? Says Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, that's a mistake. Because when you keep somebody alive for a minute, it's called chaye nefesh of the goof. Sorry, chaye sha'ah of the goof. Life, momentary life for the body. 1 moment of keeping somebody alive is a concrete, tangible accomplishment. Says Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, the same applies to the nefesh, to the soul. A person who learns 1 word of Torah, that's chaye nefesh of his neshama. Maybe later on he did change. Maybe he never became from. Maybe he never kept Shabbos, kashrus, whatever it is. But at that moment, there was a concrete, tangible accomplishment. How God's going to figure it all, calculate it all together, is something else. But at that moment, there was a concrete, tangible. The same way there's chaye shah of the goof, there's chaye shah of the nefesh. That's what Moshe Feinstein says. So when the Meraglim spoke the first time, the entire collective of Klal Yisrael did an Avera, right? They all sinned. They all went oy. When Kalev spoke and said, yes, we could go in, have faith in Moshe Rabbeinu, we could do it. What happened at that moment? At that moment, at least some of the people said, yeah. That means some of the people did tshuva at that moment. Now you did tshuva, then you went back, you backtracked, and then later on you went. But for those few moments that they did tshuva, that is a concrete, tangible accomplishment. Obviously, Obviously, anybody who ever walks into Ohr Somayach, as soon as you learn one word of Torah, that's 100% success, right? It may not be the ultimate success, but it's certainly been a success, right? If somebody works a job and you get paid minimum wage, you get paid minimum wage one time and then you get fired, job didn't work out. Well, that's relative. It did work out. You got paid. You made money. Can't say you didn't make money. Maybe next time you get a better job, maybe work harder, you make more money. But at the end of the day, there's a concrete, tangible accomplishment. This is something that everybody has to remember. That a person has to know, you never know the effects of what you have on other people. If a person could speak to somebody about Yiddishkeit, and at that moment, what you're doing is concrete. I'm not arguing with them, by the way. Arguing doesn't help. But if they're interested, you explain, you teach them some Torah, you learn a pasuk with them, you learn a Mishnah, you learn a little Gemara with them. That right there is a concrete, tangible accomplishment. What'll be down the line? Down the line, you hope for it. Down the line, that the guy, you hope the next time you see him, he's wearing a gartel and a shtreimel, But it doesn't always work out that way, right? If he's wearing a black yarmulke, that's good too. But it doesn't always work out that way. But that's not how you judge success. So if people ask, what's the success rate, or 100%. People ask me, how many guys who come through Ohr Somayach become Shomer Shabbos? I don't know. That's a different question. That you also can't possibly know, because there are guys that I've seen, and you see him a year. You see him, you say when the guy was in Ohr Somayach, his name was Tony, and then I see him 10 years later. Hi, you remember me? What's your name? Shner Chaim Goldstein. Shner Chaim Goldstein. I don't remember. Don't you remember me, Tony Goldstein? Oh, yeah. And all of a sudden the guy's wearing a black suit and a jacket and a hat and everything else. Last time I saw him, he had 2 earrings and one in his nose and a two-toned hair. So you never know. You never know where people are going to go. You never know where people are going to end up. But that's what the Torah is teaching you over here. The Torah is teaching you. You want to hear an incredible story? I'll tell you, this is incredible. I was when I was learning at Ohr Somayach. So Rabbi Wiener from the center program, I was sitting in the basement just learning. Rabbi Wiener comes over to me and he says, would you like to join a team? We're going to play a basketball game against the Israeli Air Force. They had a what do you call it? They had a program. There was a guy who was the liaison. He was a former pilot who became frum, and he would bring programs to the Israeli. He was doing programming for the Israeli Air Force. Eventually, the Army stopped the programs because too many Air Force pilots were becoming frum. So they stopped. But at that point, so he took us to an Air Force base. He asked me if I wanted to be on the team. We were to go play the Israeli Air Force. Now it was hard because I was in the middle of learning Bava Kama, but what I wouldn't do for the cause. So I had to rip myself away from my Gemara. We had to get our passports, get on there because of the security. Okay, so we went and played these Israelis. And the goal was to show them that not only we could top them spiritually, but we could beat them physically as well. And we were very excited about it. We asked the Rosh Yeshiva if we should go, and he said, yes, go, but as long as you win. Right? That was so we went to, it was a rough game. I mean, these were rough. They were Israeli. And it was the first time in my life I got fouled shooting a free throw. So the what do you call it? So they beat us. They beat us. I mean, beat us physically, and then they beat us. So what do you call it? At the end of listen, I can't help it. I'm playing 1-on-5. The other guys weren't very good. No, we had some good ball players. We were American finesse ball players. They were Israelis. It was rough. So whatever it was, on the way back from the, I'll tell you too interesting. On the way back from the Air Force Base, we were talking to the base. We at the Air Force Base, we had a meeting with the base commander. Now this is an Israeli Air Force Base commander. I haven't seen this guy in over 40 years. I still remember what he looked like after meeting him for free. He was a rare combination of confidence, humility, and arrogance all rolled into one. And the guy told us that when a plane is flying out over the horizon, a pilot is flying out in an F-16 at twice the speed of sound, so they could experience vertigo. And they lose all sense of direction. It says they have an indicator on the panel, and they have to put full faith into the indicator. The guy's out over a body of water, and he doesn't know where's the water, where's the sky. He thinks up is down, down is up, and he loses his, what do you call it? They have to put full faith in the indicator. If the indicator says up, you pull the plane up. You have to ignore your own instincts, otherwise you're going to crash the plane. So on the way back to the yeshiva, we're talking about that as a metaphor for life, that every people in the world are flying through life at twice the speed of sound with no direction, with no right or wrong, with no up or down. And only one group of people, which is us, has an indicator, which is the Torah, to tell us what is right and what is wrong. That was our metaphor. We had nothing else to talk about because we lost. So also we became very spiritual. So so then I saw the liaison. And the liaison told me 2 guys who played in that basketball game eventually became frum. He only told me this years later. I was going to wring his neck. I said, Paul, why did you tell me that? I would have liked to know that maybe something happened over there. Okay, I don't know if it was because of the basketball game, maybe it was also the classes they went to. But at the end of the day, 2 of the guys became frum. My son, that was before I was even married. My son was about 17 years old. He was learning in a yeshiva in Rehovot. And he comes home and he tells me one day, and I told my kids this story, and I told them 2 guys became frum. And I told them the names of the guys. My son comes home, he says, Daddy, what was the name of the guy you said who became frum? He lives in Bnei Brak, he's a Rosh Kollel today. So I said to my son, I told my son his name. He says, his son is my chavrusa. Right? The guy's son was my son's chavrusa in what do you call it? This was on a Friday night. We exploded at the table. We were jumping up and dancing around the room. So we sit down, and my son, to get a word out of him is like pulling, he's the opposite of me. And and then he says, what was the name of the other guy? Didn't you say his father was the mayor of a town? So I said his name. He says, oh yeah, his son's my roommate. Could you believe it? So you never know. You just never know what's going to be down the line. You just never know. But it doesn't even have to get to that. It doesn't have to be a Rosh Kollel and he's the Rosh Yeshiva or he's a whatever, a Talmid Chacham. It has to be that a guy is, that at that moment it's a concrete, tangible accomplishment. Let's go on. Take a look at the punishment. On Pasuk Lamed Zayin, page 808. 3 lines from the bottom. Vayamusu ha'anoshim motziei dibas ha'oretz ra b'magefa liftei Hashem. The people who spread a bad report about the land, they died in a plague. And Rashi tells us these spies, the 10 spies, died in a plague. What was the plague, gentlemen? Anybody know what the plague was? No. What does Rashi say? Based on the Gemara. Their tongues stretched all the way out, went into their belly buttons, and worms crawled from there to front. I'll say it again. Their tongues stretched out all the way to the belly button. Worms crawled in and crawled out, and they died of a gruesome death. And I just saw recently a source that wasn't immediate, that it stretched for about a month or so. This was the 10 spies. One of the commentators, I don't remember. One commentator says that it was the 10 spies. This was their punishment. Huh? Not the people. The people are going to die in the 40 years. The spies are going to die with this gruesome death. Now, first of all, having the tongue stretched out that far, even without the worms, is probably no party. I don't know if anybody's ever had their tongue pulled real hard, but it's no fun. And then to have it go all the way into the belly button and then have worms crawling in. Now, we know that God doesn't do anything. Every punishment has to have some sort of idea behind it. What is the idea? I mean, of all the creative forms of death, we could, why that? My goodness. I mean, can you imagine watching it? Like, whoa, I can't look at this,
I would just ask them to kill.
Yeah, well, they didn't. They can't. They couldn't talk. I can't understand you. They couldn't ask to be killed. Yeah. So what? Why? The answer is the belly button in Hebrew is called the tabur. The tabur. What's that?
Like the umbilical cord.
Not the tabur is the belly button. The tabur. It could be that the umbilical cord was called. Maybe the umbilical cord is also called the tabur, but the belly button is certainly called the tabur. That means Israel is called. There's a pasuk in Nachas referred to tabur haaretz, because if you look at the ancient world did not include America. The ancient world was basically Europe, Asia, and Africa. And right in the center point, because the Mediterranean was really where everything, and nobody even knew what was going on. America wasn't part of it. And so you had Europe, Asia, and Africa. What was the center of the world? What's the center of the midpoint? You look on a map, the midpoint is Israel. The midpoint is the Mideast, right? That's the middle point of all 3 points. It's Tabur Haaretz. Everything. But besides the fact that even if not physically, certainly the entire world is centered on Israel. Right? They could kill each other. The Ukrainians and Russians could blow each other up. But if one guy in Ramat Shlomo over here builds a balcony, the entire United Nations has a security meeting about it. You build a house over here in the everything is always focused on Israel. No matter what else is going on in the world, Israel's a major focus. So it's what's called tabura arts. They spread a bad report on the center of the earth, and therefore it's their center point of the body, the belly button theoretically, the center point of the body. That's the part that's going to be punished. The worms, the tongue stretching out, is obviously because they spoke Lashon Hara about Israel.
Why not Shelach then?
So it's a good question. I guess this was a more gruesome punishment. They had to die. People didn't die from Saras. People died from this. They died from. And the worms crawling up and down. What is that? Besides the fact that it's like, oh my goodness, besides the fact that it'll certainly convince everybody else not to speak bad about Israel. What is the idea of the worms? So I think the idea is like this. If, let's say one spy out of the 10 would have come back, and he would have said, everybody else would have said it's good, and one spy would have said, no, it's no good, they're giants, the fruits, and I got to get Shemai. So what would have happened? They'd probably be ignored. They know this guy, that's Herschel, the shul kvetch. There's always one guy who's kvetching. Right? He's always got a track record of kvetching. He's always a kvetcher. In every community there's a kvetcher, in every building, every group, there's like some guy who's always kvetching. He always sees the negative. So people would ignore him, would have an effect. When it's a group of 10 people coming back, so then there's a more powerful effect. Do you know what we learned from here, by the way? We learned from this group of 10 people that it takes 10 people to make a minyan in shul. That's a strange place to learn it from. We're from the 10 spies who are called an Ada, we learned that you need for 10 people to say Kaddish and Kedusha and have the Davar Shebek Kedusha, you need 10 people in shul. That's where the Gemara learns it from.
Not from Rabbi Avinu's,
That's where we learn davening in general, but how do you know you need 10 people? How do you need a minyan?
I thought we learned 10 people from Sodom and Gomorrah.
No, that's 10 people to save the city. That's 10 people to save the city, not the minyan. The Gemara says, how do you know you need 10 people in shul? Because it's called an Ada. This is called an Ada. An Ada is 10 people. And you need 10 people. There, you're right, that's 10 people to save the city. Here it's 10 people for shul. Is that a strange place to learn it from? Very strange. You couldn't find a better place to learn what shul is about than spies who died, spies who brought a bad report about Eretz Yisrael. Okay, maybe it's teaching us not to talk in shul. I don't know. Good. Especially Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara is never as good as when it's in shul. Right? And in shul, somehow it's delicious. Right? And by the way, Lashon Hara is a cumulative. If you talk Lashon Hara, it's an Avera. If you do it in shul, it's a bigger Avera. And if you talk about a Kohen, it's a third Avera. Because you have to treat Kohens nicely. And if you're the Talmud Chacham, it's a fourth Avera. If you're your father, it's a fifth Avera. So, boy, you can rack them up fast in shul. But you couldn't come up with a better place, honestly. You couldn't come up with a better place to learn what minyan is. The answer is, how do worms work? One worm doesn't do much damage. But if you get a group of worms together, then a tree rots. An oak tree, which is a strong tree, but if worms are eating away at the tree, eventually the tree rots. Their strength is in their numbers. The Meraglim, had you come back as individuals, that's one thing. You came back as a group. When you come back as a group, there's extra potency. Your punishment is worms, because worms have potency. So the worms, the punishment fits the crime perfectly. So what do we learn about davening? We learn the same thing about davening. We learned that davening is an individual. It's always good to daven. But when you daven with a minyan, there's what's it called, exponential potency to your tefillah. It's not just 10 people, 1 + 1 + 1. 10 is not 1 + 1 + 1. It's a new unit. It's a new unit of potency. If you daven with a minyan, it's a different type of davening. Your davening gets carried along with the davening of the shul. That's why it's learned from here. It's teaching you the potency of the group. The group's potency is not the same potency as an individual. That's the idea. Now,
More than 10 a barrier?
what's that?
Is more than 10 better? Or is
There is an idea of Berov Am Hadras Melech, that the more people there are, the more honor it is for the king. If you have a choice to daven in a smaller shul or a bigger shul, so if all else is equal, which it isn't, but if all else is equal, you daven with the bigger shul, right? If all else is equal. Sometimes if you daven with the bigger shul, there's more talking, or you don't have a seat, or there are too many people to look at across the mechitza, so it's not a good idea. But if all else is equal, so you daven. Okay, now go ahead. I want to finish. Let's go ahead now, and then you have the incident of the first Shabbos desecrator, and I want to make sure this is clear. Can we make it just a bit colder, gentlemen? We have the incident over here of the first Shabbos desecrator on page 816. Page 816. Top of the page. Vayu b'nei Yisrael b'midbar. Vayimtzu ish mikoshesh eitzim b'yom HaShabbos. They found a man gathering wood on Shabbos, which is a prohibition on Shabbos. Now the word vayimtzu means they found him. If I say you found something, what does it mean?
It was lost.
It was lost. Or you were looking for it. You were looking for it. That means that the Jewish people, vayimtzu ish mikoshesh, it didn't say v'haya ish mikoshesh. Vayimtzu ish, they found a guy who was gathering wood. What does vayimtzu mean? That means that there was supervision among the Jewish people. That it wasn't, that you had like captains. You had people were accountable. People were watching. People were looking. Hey, we're all in this together. And if you stop and think, 600,000 people, 40 years in the desert, one incident of Shabbos desecration. How do you like that? That's not bad. That's not bad. They must have had a lot of people out there standing with stones. You drive on Shabbos, you're good. You're bombed, baby. Right? They had the Shabbos, everybody's yelling, Shabbos! Shabbos! And then they had a protest at Bar Ilan, right? Shabbos! So, history repeats itself. So it says, Vayimtzu ish mikoshesh, they found a man gathering wood on Shabbos. Now, I want to make something clear over it because there's a certain misconception over it. Shabbos desecration nowadays does not get a death penalty. Nobody gets death penalty nowadays because we don't have a Sanhedrin, we don't have a Beis Din. And even in the old days, in order to be put to death for any crime, you had to have what's called witnesses and a warning. That means for a person who's going to do it, let's say somebody's going to worship idols. 2 witnesses had to say to him, if you do that, you're going to die. And he has to say he has to acknowledge the warning. He says, I hear, and I'm doing it in spite of that. And then within about 2 or 3 seconds, he has to begin the action. So in order to put somebody to death for Shabbos is the same thing. You have to have witnesses warn the guy that shouldn't do it. He has to say, I know I'm going to die if I do this. And then he begins doing it right away. So here, they found this man. Obviously, they warned him. And they knew now that he's liable for the death penalty. They just didn't know what the death penalty is. So they take him out, and Vayomer Hashem el Moshe, five lines on the top. Mos yumas ha'ish ragom oso ba'avonim. He has to be stoned to death. Kol ha'eda michutz lamachana. He gets the skila penalty. Vayotzi oso kol ha'eda michutz lamachana vayirgom oso vayamos. They stone him and he dies. Kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. Now, first of all, the skila penalty did not involve throwing stones right off the bat. Skila was being pushed off of a platform. They put a person on a platform about twice his height, pushed him off the platform. Picture a basketball backboard. They pushed him off a platform, twice his height. If he did not die from the fall, then they would drop a stone on him. And if the 2 witnesses would drop a stone on him, and if that didn't work, then other people would throw stones as well. Yeah, I mean, it's something to be avoided if you have spare time. Yeah, you definitely want to avoid it. Now, I just want to make you understand. Honestly, when you look at the laws of Shabbos, for gathering wood, and remember, the Gemara says he did this on purpose. This man did this on purpose because he wanted to teach the Jewish people a lesson. Because he felt that once there's the decree of 40 years in the desert, that the people may be of the opinion that the laws of the Torah don't apply and that they only apply when they go into the land of Israel. So he wanted to teach the people a lesson, and he did it on purpose. That's what the Gemara says. He did it on purpose. He gave up his life so that the people should learn what Shabbos desecration is. Now, whenever you do something like this, you should always ask before doing it, because just because you have a good idea doesn't mean it's a good idea. So he could have gone to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, should I teach the people a lesson? Moshe Rabbeinu would have said no. But his intent was proper intent. He just did the wrong thing. Don't they say the highway to Gehenna is paved with good intentions? So you can have good intentions, but you still go to Gehenna for it. So he was trying to teach them a lesson. Now, you have to understand, the reason I'm bringing this up is when you stop and think of the laws of Shabbos. So for example, you've learned a lot of laws of prohibited selection. Right? If you're sitting at a Shabbos table, you can't pull your cucumbers out of your salad if you don't want the cucumbers. You have to eat around it or move it away with something else. It's called borer. I don't think anybody in history was ever executed for borer, because it would take 2 witnesses, and then the guy, in other words, they're sitting at a Shabbos table and they serve you a salad. Boy, I don't like cucumbers. And I'm about to reach in, and 2 witnesses says, if you pull those cucumbers out, you die. It's not like, oh yeah, I'm going to do it anyway. It's not like, I'll pass on the salad. I'll just go with the gefilte fish. Forget about it. I'm not going to die. I'm not going to die for a salad. It just isn't. Salad is okay. Fried chicken maybe, but salad, forget about it. So the Torah is trying to communicate what the severity of Shabbos is. Shabbos is so important that if the circumstances were correct, a person deserves stoning penalty for it. Was anybody ever stoned for Shabbos? Anybody ever get killed for Shabbos? The Gemara says that they one time they killed somebody during the Greek period. They killed, Beis Din executed somebody because there was too much Shabbos desecration. I mean, nowadays, with the what do you call it? There'd be bodies lying all over the streets, right? So we don't execute, and I don't know that anybody was ever executed. A crime of passion, maybe, murder, adultery, where they're warned and they do it anyway. It's a crime of passion. I don't think that anybody's got a passion for salad. I mean, it's okay with the main dish, but it's not like, this is my reason for living. There was a college quarterback. I'll get to you one second. There are a few questions. I'll get to the question in a second. There was a college quarterback who went on he got off of red meat. He went on a diet. He got off of red meat for his training. So he had a 300-pound lineman. And they interviewed this lineman and said, Andre, are you also going to go off of red meat? So Andre said, eating steak is part of what I'm all about, right? So I can understand giving up your life for a steak. For a salad, nobody's going to do it. So all these things, gathering wood on Shabbos, I won't gather wood. I'm not going to die for wood. A crime of passion is something else. The Torah is trying to communicate over. Do you know how severe Shabbos is? You know how important Shabbos is? A person who theoretically would, all circumstances are fulfilled, then a person is liable for that. He deserves to die for desecrating Shabbos. That's what the Torah is communicating over here. Okay, somebody in the back category. What's your name?
Baruch.
Baruch, yeah, go ahead.
So if the Makoshesh wouldn't have done that, he would have had Mashiach potentially from eating on one Shabbos?
Would we have had Mashiach? I'm assuming your question is based on the fact that the Gemara says if the Jewish people would keep 2 Shabbosim, so Mashiach would come.
Yeah.
I don't have any source that says that would be. The Gemara also has to be understood exactly what the Gemara means. It doesn't say, I don't know of any source that says that had they kept this, then Mashiach would have come. They are criticized for breaking Shabbos right away. But I don't know of any source that says Mashiach would have come. Yes?
Do you think this man may have had an unfair advantage given the fact that he did not have the ability to wear the tzitzis, which would have reminded him of his duties?
Excellent question. As a matter of fact, that's why the next section is tzitzis. The next section is tzitzis because Moshe Rabbeinu said to God that, he had an unfair disadvantage. He had a disadvantage because he's not allowed to wear his tefillin on Shabbos. If he was wearing his tefillin, that would remind him that he has to behave properly. And so Hashem says, okay, so we're going to make sure that from now on that doesn't happen. That's exactly why the Torah goes to tzitzis. As a matter of fact, the commentaries ask, David HaMelech once went into a bathhouse, and David HaMelech was upset because he said, I'm in the bathhouse, I have no mitzvahs with me. And then he realized, I do, because I have bris milah. So then the commentaries ask, going back to what Moshe Rabbeinu asked God, so, all right, he didn't have tefillin, but he had bris milah. Why didn't the bris milah remind him? Good question. He's got bris milah. In other words, if you need a reminder of who you are, and I better not desecrate Shabbos, if Moshe Rabbeinu is right, tefillin would have worked. And God said, he didn't have tefillin, so we give you tzitzis. So then why doesn't bris milah work? That's also a mitzvah. But the question is, you've got the reminder. I mean, it's tefillin you might not also see. It's also out of your sight. You're just wearing it, right? You don't necessarily see if you're wearing a jacket, they're under your. The question is, but you've got something with you. It's not like you're devoid. 1 second. The reason I'm asking the question is because there's a brilliant answer, not mine. Not my answer. The commentaries ask this question. It's not my question. Listen, anything that sounds intelligent is not coming from me. I'm just quoting the commentaries. I'm just telling you the commentaries that say, why did this whole section, look at the very top, you see the consistency of Torah here. Look at the first line. Vayu b'nei Yisrael b'midbar. Why did it tell us they were in the midbar? We know they're in the midbar. Haven't you been following the story? Of course they're in the midbar. Where do you think they are? Not in Denver. Where have you been Israel by me? They wish they were because they're up 3-1, but they weren't. So why would you, what do you call? Why would you say that? Why would you say that? What do you call? Why would you say they're in the midbar? I know they're in the midbar. Oh, the answer is because they didn't do bris milah while they were in the midbar. So now we know why he doesn't have bris milah. Why does the Torah say they're in the midbar? Take out bris milah. Now Moshe Rabbeinu says, what about tefillin? This is where you get the double catch. Right? That's right. So now we know why. Otherwise, one of you should have asked the question. But you've been Esau by midbar. One of you should have said, well, why are you telling me that? And the commentary say that nothing is redundant. They're telling you that's why he doesn't have bris milah, because they didn't do bris milah in the midbar. What about tefillin? Tefillin you don't wear on Shabbos. So what's going to be? But that's why. So what about your question? What's your name?
Yishai.
Yishai, nice name. My grandson's name is Yishai, right? But he cries a lot. But the way to go. That's when I give him to my. That's why I just give him to my daughter-in-law when that happens. But so your question is, yeah, but it was a disadvantage. It was a disadvantage. That's why we come on to the answer, but he's doing it intentionally. He's doing it intentionally to teach everybody a lesson. The tefillin wouldn't have helped him. The tefillin wouldn't have helped him. He would have worn the tefillin, he would have done it anyway because he wants to teach them a lesson. But then the Torah says, we do want you to have a constant reminder. We go to the tzitzis. Question, go ahead.
Didn't the Jewish people do Brit Milah before they received the Torah?
It says that the midbar they didn't do anymore. They didn't have a north wind to cure them, so they didn't do Brit Milah. That's what it says in the Gemara.
Okay, because I knew with converts
It says they didn't do in the midbar they didn't do it. That's why before they go into Eretz Yisrael, we see later on that Yoshua they'd circumcise before going into Eretz Yisrael.
So that was not for the new generation, but the generation that received the Torah, they.
I don't know. That's the answer they give over here for why it says Vayubid Esau Bamidbar. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. What's up?
I missed the point. So why did it say that they're in the midbar?
To emphasize the fact that's why he doesn't have bris milah to protect them. Because the midbar they didn't do bris milah. Yeah. Go ahead. I want to go on. Go ahead.
Yeah. Why are other sinners' names mentioned in the Torah but not his? The one who desecrated Shabbos.
Oh, why isn't his name mentioned in the Torah? And then we know that his name is Slavchad. One second. The Gemara says that Rabbi Akiva mentions his name. I don't remember. It's a good question. I'm going to try to look up the Gemara and try to go over why his name is. It's a good question because every name, when a name is mentioned, that means that the person is doing a slow roast in Gehenna every time we mention his name. I mean, the fact is that when we read this, it's also not good for him. But the name makes it worse. Okay, a fast roast, a hot roast, whatever it is. He's burning like blazes. Yeah.
Maybe it's a nod to the shita that he was actually trying to do a good thing.
It's something like that. That it's not. He was there. There was some sort of positive side to this. That it was l'shem shemayim. But we know his name was Tzalafchad, and that's his daughters are the Benos Tzalafchad. They the 5 girls who come later on, and they ask for a portion in the land of Israel. And they even say our father wasn't one of the rebels. His father was one who died for his own sin, and and he's not an outcast. Let me look it up. I want to get on to tzitzis, gentlemen. Let's go on to the next section. V'yomer Hashem el Moshe lemor 8:16. For now, and please answer me when you ask me questions. Please ask me the only question that I can answer. V'yomer Hashem el Moshe lemor. Daber el bnei Yisrael. Ve'amarta aleihem, ve'asu lehem tzitzis. Al kanfei vigdeim l'dorosav v'nosav al tzitzis ha'kanaf v'sol techeles. Okay, so we got the mitzvah of tzitzis over here. Now, first of all, the idea of tzitzis is, and then it says you're going to look at the tzitzis, and you remember we say this paragraph at least twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, and a fundamental paragraph in our life. The idea of tzitzis, the basic idea of tzitzis is the proverbial string around the finger. That means if you're wearing tzitzis and you look at your tzitzis are a reminder of who you are. And the person who sees the tzitzis remind the person that he's going to live a conflict right now. Am I tzitzis or am I not? In my behavior, the opposite of tzitzis? And having the reminder, the ultimate case is the Gemara in Menachos that says there was a man who heard about a certain woman of ill repute, and he paid a vast sum of money to visit with her. And at the last minute, right before getting involved like club behavior, he at the last minute his tzitzis jumped up and hit him in the face, and he left. And she said to him, "I'm not letting you go until you see what flaw did you see in my beauty." She was apparently very beautiful. He said, "What flaw did you see?" He said, "I swear, never seen anybody as beautiful as you, but we have a mitzvah called tzitzis, and I'm not supposed to do this." So she ended up converting, and she asked him for his name and the yeshiva he learned in. And eventually she went to the yeshiva. She sold her property, went to the yeshiva, and she asked Rabbi Chia, "Do you have a Talmud?" She showed him the document. The guy wrote the thing down. Rabbi Chia determined that she wasn't marrying him just because he was going to become a good Jewish doctor, that she married him because she wanted to convert and become truly Jewish. And then the Gemara says that he ended up marrying her, and that which he was not allowed because it was forbidden eventually became permissible to him. Right? And then that's what the Gemara says. That's the reward. Then the Gemara says if that's his reward in this world, it reminds you of the reward in the world to come. So the question becomes, what does it mean his tzitzis jumped up and hit him in the face? What does that mean? The tzitzis jumped up and hit him in the face. You know, it's not like one of those cartoons, you know, where they have the cartoon punch, and all of a sudden, it's like, somebody gets in all the cartoons, somebody gets punched, and all of a sudden you get these shapes, boom. What does that mean? So obviously, we even use an expression in English. When you get an idea, don't you ever say, "Wow, it hit me like a ton of bricks"? Now we use an expression like that. That means that at the last minute he's looking at his tzitzis saying, "1 second, it's either this or not this. Who am I?" And he looks at the tzitzis, and the tzitzis become that reminder. That means that the tzitzis are there to serve as a constant reminder of who we are. The fact that it says uri'isem oso, you shall see the tzitzis, and by the way, it doesn't mean you have to see your own tzitzis. Seeing other people's tzitzis helps also. You know, the fact that you see somebody else's tzitzis could also serve as a reminder. We look at each other's tzitzis. Now, there are two customs here, by the way. There is the Hasidic custom, if you've probably seen the Hasidim wear the entire garment over their clothing. They wear the tzitzis over their clothing. And by the way, the tzitzis is not the garment. The garment is we call it my tzitzis. But the tzitzis are the strings. And the strings have to go on any four-cornered garment. If you took your t-shirt, if you're wearing a t-shirt, if you would cut your t-shirt more than halfway up in two places, that would leave you with four corners. And that garment then has to have tzitzis on them. If you're not wearing a four-cornered garment, by the letter of the law, you don't have to wear tzitzis. We wear, the tzitzis that we wear is a four-cornered garment, and we obligate ourselves each day to wear tzitzis, because the Gemara says, even though it's not mandatory, someone who does not wear tzitzis, so that when there is a time when HaKadosh Baruch Hu is unleashing his wrath for other reasons, then he'll get tagged for not wearing tzitzis also. That's like when you've been pushing the envelope at home, and one day you finally do that thing that your dad starts spanking for, and he starts giving it to you good and proper for getting smart in school. And while he's there, he says, "And this is for the incident with the noodles, and this is what happened with your sister," and he just throws everything in one package. It's all of a sudden he throws everything in. It's not, he doesn't just let the noodles alone weren't enough to get it, and what you did to your sister wasn't enough. But once the straw that broke the camel's back, which involved the police, so then what do you call it? Then you get it for everything. So a person's wearing tzitzis, be'iden rischa, the Gemara says, when Hashem is angry, so to speak. So then a person who's not wearing tzitzis, a person who just simply neglects them as a tzitzis, then he'll be punished for that as well. Any four-cornered guy, the frum kids, we used to always have this raging debate when we played basketball. Should you play with your tzitzis on or take them off, because they would get all sweaty. So eventually they came out with these like sports tzitzis, right, where you wear a T-shirt, but the T-shirt has four corners on it, and you put tzitzis on. You put tzitzis on the corners of the tzitzis. A person, it's an easy mitzvah. The Vilna Gaon on his deathbed, he grabbed the Vilna Gaon was the greatest sage of the 17th century, 18th century, and he's even got status like a Rishon. And the Vilna Gaon on his deathbed, Vilna Gaon used to study Torah 20 out of 24 hours, and on his deathbed, he grabbed his tzitzis and started crying. He said, "Where I'm going, even an easy mitzvah like this, I won't be able to fulfill." All right, hold the questions for a second. I want to finish this. I want to at least start it. So that's the basic idea of the tzitzis, and it's an easy mitzvah. Now, the Torah says you put on tcheles on the tzitzis. Tcheles is a blue, which nowadays we don't know. It's a marine creature of some sort. There are those that claim that they know what the marine creature is. They usually live in Sfas. And the what do you call it? The biggest poskim, Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Elyashiv, the Chazon Ish, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, all these people did not wear tchelos on their tzitzis because they said even if you could prove it, which you can't, but even if you could prove that that is the tchelos, we need a tradition for it. So all the proof in the world won't help you because we don't have a tradition that that is the tchelos. The tchelos was some sort of marine creature which surfaced once in 70 years. If you were the guy who found this marine creature, you became rich because a lot of people need tchelos, and you're the only guy who's got it. So I'm davening for that too. And the what do you call it? So the Redziner Rebbe, Rav Henoch Leiner, in 1895, he did claim that he had found. He wrote an entire sefer on proving that he has found the tchelos, and he was a very, very big person. But the leading poskim of the generation did not accept it. Redziner Hasidim do wear tchelos today, right? They do still wear tchelos, but the Litvische traditional Litvaks do not wear tchelos. Now, the idea of the tzitzis is that when a king wants to reward, wants to show that a certain subject is important, so he gives him a special garment to wear. And that's part of the idea of the tchelos. Tchelos is blue, some sort of blue which represents royalty. Royalty always wore blue. So the tzitzis demonstrate that we have been chosen by the king as royalty. And therefore there are two approaches to it. Approach number one is, we're royalty, we're wearing tchelos, we don't have the tchelos, we still have to wear the tzitzis, but we are royalty, and therefore our behavior should be royal behavior. In other words, there are two ways to look at an Aveira. There's like, oh boy, I don't want to burn in Gehenna. There's another way to look at the Aveira is, you know what, this is beneath me. It's just beneath my dignity. I'm not going to do that. That's like, wait, is that who I really am? Is that the type of person that I really am? And therefore it's a constant reminder to us that we are royalty. That's what the tzitzis is. And if a person realizes that we're royalty, we're dignified, so our behavior is at a certain standard. So if that doesn't work, then a person has to think about Gehenna. I don't want to burn. But at the end of the day, the idea here is that we should realize that we are royalty. And that's why the Torah then says, first it says, Ureisem, you should look at the tzitzis, 3 lines from the bottom, Uzachartem es kol mitzvos Hashem v'asisam, you should remember all the mitzvahs. I remember all the mitzvahs. I don't even know all the mitzvahs. How can I remember all the mitzvahs? The answer is, remember that we have an obligation to do the mitzvahs, and we want to do them because we're royalty. We want to serve the king. When you are a royal subject, you're always looking to get in better with the king. You always want to do anything that's going to please the king. So wear the tzitzis and remember the mitzvahs. That means try to make the king, so to speak, as happy as possible. What if that doesn't work? What if that doesn't work? Then the Torah says, don't stray after your hearts and after your eyes. What does that mean? I'll get to you 1 second, Mary. What does that mean? Don't stray after your hearts, after your eyes. So if you look at Rashi, we'll have to leave this for tomorrow. We'll talk about the hearts and the eyes tomorrow. Then I want to get into Parsha Koch. Mayor, what were you going to ask?
I just wanted to ask, now that we are relating the tzitzis with Shabbos, is it related with the 39 rounds that it goes with?
Oh, very interesting. I never thought of that. I never thought of the 39 malachas.
Maybe, 7, 8.
There are lots of other symbols. We'll talk about what the symbol it symbolizes the body, but I never. Interesting. I have to see if anybody says that. What was the question? You asked about why it doesn't say Tzlav Chazdeim. I'll have to try to look. Okay. Mayor, call it. It hinges on the fringes.